Chinese leader Xi Jinping and US President Joe Biden have met for long-awaited talks. On the agenda for the two leaders, issues like Taiwan, Ukraine and North Korea's nuclear ambitions. They've been meeting ahead of the G20 Summit in Bali, Indonesia, which kicks off on Tuesday. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak will call on the Group of 20 for coordinated action to address international economic instability and the cost of living crisis. In a statement, the UK government said the world is looking to the G20 to alleviate the burden on the world's poorest people. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov will represent the Russian president at the G20 summit. This after the Kremlin said that the Russian president was too busy to attend the summit himself. Well, let's talk now to our principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibal, who's joining me live from Bali. Siddhant, what can you tell us about those long-awaited talks between President Xi and President Biden?
Well, Ollie, there was a lot of conciliatory statements, to use the phrase, given the fact that how the Chinese president mentioned about how to manage the relationship, while the US president said that competition should not lead to conflict, and both sides willing to have candid conversations. We are yet to hear have the talks come to an end or not, but there will be a presser by the US President Joe Biden here in Bali at around 9:30 p.m. local time, and that will give more details that whether the Taiwan Strait crisis, which was looming over this conversation, discussed between the two sides, and whether there was a mention about Russia-Ukraine conflict as well. These are the key focus areas, but trade has been another area of friction between the world's number one and number two economy. But today's meeting here in Bali is seen as a breakthrough, given that there was a lot of friction between the two countries, and both sides were locked in a lot of heated rhetoric against each other. So this can ease the tensions, but the big question is, will this meeting lead to easing of tensions in coming few weeks and months, of course?
And Siddhant, what do we know about Sergei Lavrov's health? Because there were reports that he'd had to go to hospital.
Well, there were reports, and the reports were quickly dismissed by the Russian government. The Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson first came out with a statement, and then Sergei Lavrov's video also emerged of he being fit and fine. But there are, of course, conflicting reports so far, now dismissed by the Russian Foreign Ministry. But the Russians believe that this is part of, to use the phrase of the Russian Foreign Ministry, as fake news by the Western media. This is, of course, a standard comment coming from the Russian side, but no word from the Indonesian side, which is, of course, the host of this summit, and they haven't commented so far as to whether the Russian Foreign Minister was taken to hospital or not.
And those calls from UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak for the G20 to come up with coordinated action on issues like poverty amid the economic crisis, what chance of those aims being successful?
Well, bleak chances, I would like to say, given the fact that the three-day Sherpa meeting started on 11th and was supposed to come on 13th. Sherpas are basically the chief negotiators when it comes to the G20 grouping conversation, and the conversation is still continuing. They cannot agree on the joint communique. First, there was a worry over the joint photograph, the family photo. It looks like there will be no family photo this time, for the first time in the history of the G20 summits, because, of course, the divide between Russia and the West. But now the fear has grown as negotiations are still continuing over the joint communique. Just few hours left for the summit to start, but no word as of now that whether the communique has been agreed, because literally it goes down to the bottom when it comes to the bureaucrats conversing. And of course the Russian bureaucrats, the Western bureaucrats, they do not essentially have a good practical relationship in terms of even these multilateral cooperation. So when it comes to what the UK Prime Minister has been saying, it looks like very hopeful of him to just talk about these issues, but it is highly unlikely that there will be a joint comment or statement even on issues like climate change or poverty reduction.
Siddhant, thank you.